The Arawak-speaking ancestors of the Taíno people are believed to have migrated from the northern coast of South America in the late Neolithic period. An ethnically distinct Taíno tribal community emerged in the Caribbean between 400 BC and 200 AD. By the 10th to 13th centuries of our era, they established themselves as the dominant culture throughout the islands of the Greater Antilles. Hispaniola, today's Haiti and the Dominican Republic, eastern Cuba, Puerto Rico, Jamaica, the Bahamas, and the Virgin Islands. Their culture reached its highest state of flourishing by the time Columbus encountered them in 1492. Mistakenly believing that the Caribbean islands he landed on were the Indies, he called the indigenous inhabitants Indians. For the Taíno people, their encounter with European adventurers proved fatal. The moment in history when Columbus raised King Ferdinand's royal banner to claim the Bahamian island thought to be Guanahani, the indigenous name for San Salvador, on October 12, 1492, is enshrined in a famous mid-19th century painting by John Vanderlyn in the U.S. Capitol Rotunda. Vanderlyn's depiction foreshadows Columbus's taking possession of not only an island, but by this act of conquest, taking possession of its natives' rights to their land, their culture, and personal freedom. At one stroke, the indigenous inhabitants were brutally subjugated to the merciless exploitation of European colonists following in his wake. Although believed extinct by the mid-16th century, their surviving descendants preserved Taíno traditions, customs, and practices, which have become a source of great interest and pride in the present day. Today, reconstructed Taíno villages display the circular tent-shaped houses, or bohíos, first described in the accounts of Columbus, who admired how clean and well-built they were. To resist hurricane-strength winds, their conical walls were made of strong, deeply set cane poles, covered by a tightly thatched roof topped with heavy palm leaves. Smaller bohíos sheltered a family group of 8 to 10 members, while the largest bohíos were spacious enough to accommodate as many as 100 people. Columbus was surprised to find that inside the sparsely furnished, well-swept bohíos, island natives slept in cotton nets called hamaca, hammocks. Spanish sailors quickly adopted this Taíno invention for use on board their ships. The homes of hereditary chiefs, or caciques, were larger rectangular structures located in the center of each settlement. Village caciques regulated the welfare of a highly organized hierarchical society under the superior authority of regional chiefs, who answered in turn to the provincial chieftain. There were 5 major chieftains on the territory of Hispaniola and 5 chieftains in Puerto Rico. Cuba, the largest island in the Antilles, was divided into 29 chiefdoms. In cooperation with village elders and advisors, the caciques sat in judgment, assigned daily work, and ensured that food and other necessities were equally shared. The harmonious existence of Taíno society, undisturbed by the outbreaks of fights, violence, or warfare, astonished Columbus. The king maintains a most wonderful state, and everything takes place in such an appropriate and well-ordered manner that it is a pleasure to see. Widely dispersed Taíno communities ranged from small villages of 80 people to settlements of 3,000. The houses of every village surrounded a central court, or beiti, for religious and secular ceremonies, as well as for games. played with rubber-like balls weighing up to 24 pounds. Only the shoulders and hips of each player could touch the ball to keep it from hitting the ground. Well-preserved stone-lined baities have been uncovered in Puerto Rico, helping us to understand the key role ceremonies and games played in Taíno daily life. Many of the religious rites celebrated in the baities honored spirit beings called zemis, represented in carved figures held by a shaman or medicine man. These exquisitely fashioned artifacts of worship, which took the forms of strangely contorted human faces and animals, were utilized by the shaman to communicate with the spirit world or to aid in healing. Seated on beautifully carved wooden benches or dijos, caciques presided over all public rituals accompanied by music and dance. Chiefs and their ancestors were venerated in oral epics sung or recited by the village poet. A three-cornered stone with powerfully expressive anthropomorphic features represents the highest god in the Taíno pantheon, Yokahu, the great lord of cassava. Ground from the starchy root of the yucca tree, cassava was the staple food of the Taíno diet. Carved triangular stones of this fertility god were often buried in the ground by indigenous islanders to ensure a good harvest. Remarkably skillful farmers, especially the women, who played the largest role, the Taíno raised yucca, corn, sweet potatoes, squash, beans, and peppers on elevated mounds called canucos, packed with leaves to promote drainage, avoid soil erosion, and protect against flooding. Their extraordinarily productive system of agriculture produced yields far surpassing anything known in Europe at the time, with an absolute minimum of labor. Living in ecological balance with their tropical habitat, they fully exploited their natural resources. Nowhere is Taíno ingenuity better exemplified than in their ability to strain toxic levels of cyanide from the juice of the yucca before drying and grinding the tuberous root into cassava flour, which they baked into a crispy flatbread called casabe. Cotton shrubs cultivated near their homes provided fibers for fishing nets, hammocks, and intricate embroidered belts. With ample leisure time, the Taíno took pleasure in smoking tobacco, a crop whose value Columbus failed to recognize. Expert navigators, Antilleans traveled from island to island in large ocean-going canoes, made from the hollowed-out trunk of a single tree. Taíno dugout canoes could carry up to 100 passengers. Although the Caribbean islands lacked large game animals for hunting, fishing supplied an abundant source of protein for coastal communities. Taíno, the name the indigenous people of the Greater Antilles came to be called by, means good people. Paying tribute to their incredible friendliness, openness, and generosity, Columbus memorably described them as a loving people without covetousness for the goods of others, who have the softest and gentlest speech in the world, always laughing. I do not believe there is a better people or better country. Guileless and honest, Columbus marveled that the natives showed the greatest affection toward all of us, willing to trade everything they owned for a worthless trifle or even nothing. His awe at the physical beauty and gentle customs of the Taíno, however, did not extend to recognizing their essential humanity. In his diary, he stated that on his very first day on Guanahani, he ordered his men to seize 6 natives, believing they would make good servants, good to be ordered about, doing all that may be necessary. In the admiral's view, the native population's lack of European clothes, religion, and technology, above all steel weapons to defend themselves, served to justify their subjugation by colonial masters. By the time of his 4th and last voyage in 1502, thousands of Taíno from the island named Hispaniola by its discoverer had been transported to Spain to be sold into slavery. Those natives who remained on the island were coerced into brutal forced labor, mining for gold. The merciless tribute system instituted by Columbus to extract the coveted gold subjected any natives failing to fulfill their quarterly quota to have one of their hands chopped off. Noses and ears of native islanders suspected of stealing were also summarily cut off. Antillean islanders not sent to the mines were bound to a system of communal slavery on colonial plantations established under Columbus's governorship. Taíno attempting to escape these inhuman conditions by fleeing to the mountains were pursued by Spanish captains who attacked them with fierce dogs which tore them to pieces and devoured them. The genocidal nature of European colonialism is starkly revealed by the fact that 60 years after Columbus landed on Hispaniola, only a few hundred Taíno out of a population of what may have been as large as 250,000 survived. For the natives of the Greater Antilles, European colonization turned out to be an unimaginable catastrophe. Most succumbed to European infectious diseases such as smallpox, against which they had no natural immunity. Others starved to death or committed mass suicide, while a few managed to escape to remote regions beyond the reach of their conquerors. Yet the legacy of this once flourishing civilization survived in the matrilineal DNA of Taíno women taken as wives by many of the Spanish colonists. This combination of genes was further mixed with the arrival of African slaves imported to work on sugar plantations, which generated the great wealth of the Caribbean colonies. Multiracial mestizo and maroon communities preserved elements of Taíno cultural traditions, customs, and practices in the more isolated mountainous regions of Cuba, Puerto Rico, Haiti, Jamaica, and other islands of the Greater Antilles. The rediscovery of the Taínos' haunting artifacts, sophisticated agricultural methods, herbal medicine, ceremonies, language, and music has led to a resurgence of interest in the indigenous culture of the Caribbean, promoted by organizations and museums springing up across the region, including the U.S. mainland. Puerto Rican festivals celebrating Taíno rituals, for example, are among the most visible efforts to reclaim and preserve this precious heritage.
Oh yokahu atabe. Taíno ti, Taíno ti, Taíno ti, yokahu atabe. O kama, yokahu baguamalokoti, guabanse shatavera, yokahu